I never planned to wake up one day and realize I could barely look at Mark without feeling a wave of resentment wash over me. It didn't happen overnight. That's the thing about marriage that no one warns you about. The distance grows so gradually that you barely notice until suddenly there's an ocean between you. 23 years together, and somewhere along the way, we became strangers sharing the same address. I remember when his laugh used to be my favorite sound in the world. Now I find myself wincing when he chuckles at those same predictable jokes during his favorite sitcoms. You might be nodding along right now, recognizing something familiar in my words. That's the strange comfort in all this pain, knowing I'm not alone. So many of us find ourselves here, wondering how the person we once couldn't live without became someone we're not sure we want to live with anymore. The weight of this realization hit me on our anniversary last month. He gave me a kitchen appliance, a nice one, sure, but wrapped in paper that said "Happy Birthday" because he'd forgotten to buy proper wrapping paper. I smiled and thanked him while something inside me quietly shattered. The mental load is what broke me first. For years, I've managed our entire existence. Doctor appointments, social calendar, children's activities, household supplies, gift giving, vacation planning, all while working full-time at the accounting firm. Meanwhile, Mark handles the lawn and takes out the garbage once a week. When our daughter Emma needed braces, I researched orthodontists, scheduled consultations, figured out insurance coverage, and arranged payments. When she had her heart broken at 16, I was the one who sat with her until 3 a.m. Mark's contribution was to awkwardly pat her shoulder the next morning and say, "You'll find another boyfriend. You know what I'm talking about, don't you?" That invisible work that keeps a family functioning but never gets acknowledged because it's expected. The mental gymnastics of remembering every detail of 4 people's lives while your own needs fade into background noise. The exhaustion isn't physical. It's the soul-deep fatigue that comes from carrying burdens no one else can see. Like Sarah, my coworker, who once broke down in the break room after finding out her husband had planned a fishing trip on the weekend of their son's championship game. "He didn't even check the calendar," she sobbed. "He never checks the calendar." I still remember the early days when Mark would leave little notes in my lunch bag or call just to say he missed me. The small gestures disappeared so gradually that I can't pinpoint when they stopped. Now, intimacy means sitting in the same room, absorbed in our separate devices, occasionally sharing a headline or funny meme. Our conversations have become transactional. Who's picking up the kids? What bills need paying? Whether the dishwasher is broken or just temperamental again. I've started keeping a mental list of things I want to tell him about my day, my thoughts, my dreams. But by evening, I'm too tired to try bridging the gap. You deserve more than becoming background noise in your own marriage. We all do. But how do you explain to someone that while they've been physically present, they've been emotionally absent for years? How do you make them understand that loneliness feels most crushing when you're sitting right next to them? Jennifer from my book club confided that she and her husband Rob haven't had a real conversation in 3 years. "He talks at me, not with me," she explained. "He'll spend 45 minutes describing a work project in excruciating detail, but can't remember to ask how my day was. It's like I'm furniture that occasionally needs updating on his life." The resentment builds in small moments. When Mark interrupts me mid-sentence to correct some trivial detail. When he dismisses my concerns about our son's anxiety as just a phase. When he rolls his eyes if I suggest we try a new restaurant instead of our usual Friday night pizza place. Each time I swallowed my frustration, telling myself it wasn't worth the argument. But those unaddressed disappointments didn't disappear. They burrowed deeper, forming a foundation of bitterness that now colors everything. I've become the woman who sighs a lot, and I hate that version of myself. You might recognize this pattern in your own relationship, the moment when speaking up feels more exhausting than staying silent, the slow poison of letting things go until you've gone too far from yourself to find your way back, the gradual erosion of your own voice. My friend Diane took a different approach with her husband Tom. After 15 years of simmering resentment, she started therapy and learned to voice her needs clearly. "It wasn't magic," she told me. "We still struggle, but at least now we're struggling together instead of suffering separately." Her words keep replaying in my mind as I wonder if Mark and I still have that chance. I turned 45 last year and suddenly realized how much of myself I've surrendered to this marriage. My passion for photography, abandoned because Mark thought it was a waste of money. My dream of visiting Japan, shelved because he prefers all-inclusive resorts in Mexico. The book club I quit because he complained about being abandoned one Thursday evening a month. Looking in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back. She's tired, withdrawn, a faded version of the vibrant person I used to be. Sometimes I wonder if Mark would even notice if I disappeared and was replaced by a life-sized cardboard cutout that occasionally muttered, "That's nice, dear," at appropriate intervals. You might be thinking about your own compromises right now, the small surrenders that seemed insignificant at the time but have accumulated into a mountain of lost self. We're told relationships require sacrifice, but no one mentions how easily sacrifice becomes self-erasure. Lisa, my college roommate who I reconnected with recently, shocked me by revealing she's taken up roller derby at 52. Her husband initially laughed at the idea, but now cheers her on at every match. "I almost didn't tell him about it," she admitted. "I realized I'd gotten into the habit of assuming he'd dismiss my ideas before I even shared them. If you've enjoyed this story so far, I'd love your support. Please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement helps me continue creating content that resonates with real experiences. Don't forget to share with someone who might need to hear they're not alone in these feelings. Now, let's continue our journey. The physical distance grew alongside the emotional one. I can't recall the last time Mark reached for my hand just because. The casual touches, a hand on my lower back as he passed behind me, fingers brushing mine when passing a coffee mug, have vanished so completely that when he accidentally bumped into me last week, I flinched with surprise. Our bedroom has become a place for sleeping and nothing more. Intimacy requires vulnerability, and somewhere along the way, we both closed off those parts of ourselves. Sometimes I catch him looking at me with what might be longing, but neither of us seems to remember how to cross the divide we've created. You might be wondering if it's normal for passion to fade this completely. I've wondered that too. Watching couples who've been together twice as long as we have still stealing kisses in grocery store aisles or dancing in their kitchens when they think no one's watching. Is that performance? Or have they discovered something we've lost? Ellen and Greg, our neighbors for 15 years, still hold hands on their evening walks. When I mentioned this to Ellen, wondering how they've maintained that connection, she laughed. "We schedule sex every Wednesday and Sunday." Sounds unsexy, but knowing it's coming makes us flirt all week. You have to be intentional about desire or life crowds it out. I've become hyper-aware of my own critical voice lately. The way I react to Mark's harmless habits with disproportionate irritation, his loud chewing, the way he clears his throat repeatedly during movies, how he leaves cabinet doors slightly ajar. These minor annoyances have become symbols of every disappointment, every unmet need. Last night, he left his dirty socks on the bathroom floor again, and I found myself standing there, clutching them in my fist, fighting back tears. It wasn't about the socks. It was about feeling unseen, unheard, unvalued after decades of partnership. It was about the thousands of socks I've picked up without comment or complaint. You might recognize this moment, when something trivial becomes the vessel for years of accumulated hurt. When you realize you're no longer angry about what just happened, but about everything that led you here. The dangerous tipping point where contempt begins to replace love. Rachel from my office divorced her husband of 30 years over a tube of toothpaste. He squeezed it from the middle again, she explained. And suddenly I could see the next 20 years stretching before me. Nothing changing, nothing improving. Just me getting more bitter while he remained oblivious. I filed the papers the next day. What scares me most is that Mark seems content with our status quo. While I'm drowning in resentment, he continues watching football on Sundays, playing golf on Saturdays, and assuming everything is fine because I haven't explicitly said otherwise. His complacency feels like another betrayal, another confirmation that he doesn't truly see me. I attempted a conversation about our relationship last month. "Are you happy with us?" I asked during a commercial break. He glanced up from his phone, looking confused. "Sure, why wouldn't I be?" he replied, before returning to his scrolling. That brief exchange exhausted me more than a marathon would have. You deserve a partner who notices when you're struggling, who asks questions without prompting, who sees your silence as a sign of withdrawal rather than contentment. We all deserve someone who checks in, not just checks boxes. Someone who pursues connection instead of assuming it's secure. Michael and David, the couple who recently moved in across the street, have a weekly State of the Union conversation. We talk about what's working, what isn't, and what we each need that week, Michael explained when we chatted over the fence. It sounded cheesy when our therapist suggested it, but it's been revolutionary for us. No issue gets too big before we address it. I found my old journals while cleaning out the attic last weekend. Entries from our early dating years and the first decade of marriage. The way I wrote about Mark then, with such admiration and tenderness, made me weep. When did that bright-eyed woman disappear? When did her love story turn into a cautionary tale? The entries traced our evolution, from passionate partners with shared dreams to co-managers of a household operation. I could pinpoint moments when I should have spoken up, when I chose peace over honesty, compliance over confrontation. The slow surrender of my voice happened one silence at a time. You might be wondering if it's too late for your relationship, as I've wondered about mine. Is there a point of no return with resentment, a threshold beyond which the damage is irreparable? Or is there always hope for renewal if both people commit to the rebuilding process? Claire, my therapist, who I finally started seeing alone after Mark refused couples counseling, believes relationships can heal from almost anything except indifference. Anger means you still care, she explains. The dangerous place is when you no longer feel anything at all. That's when a marriage is truly over. I started making small changes 3 months ago. Nothing dramatic, just reclaiming pieces of myself that had gotten lost. I rejoined the photography club that meets on Thursday evenings. I booked a solo weekend trip to New York to visit museums. I started saying no to family obligations that always fell on my shoulders. Mark's reaction was predictably defensive at first. He made comments about me having a midlife crisis and abandoning the family. But something unexpected happened as I continued prioritizing my needs. He began to notice me again. Not just my physical presence, but me as a person with desires and interests. You might be surprised how the simple act of reclaiming your identity can shift the dynamic in a relationship. When you stop being a guaranteed presence, your partner has the opportunity to miss you. When you find joy independently, you bring that energy back into your shared space. Amanda, who runs the photography club, told me about her own marriage renaissance at 50. I stopped waiting for Richard to make me happy and started making myself happy. Weirdly, that made him interested in me again. He saw me enjoying life and wanted to be part of it, rather than just witnessing it from the sidelines. The conversation that changed everything happened on a rainy Tuesday. No special occasion, no planned intervention, just an ordinary evening when I finally couldn't contain the words anymore. I've been unhappy for years, I told Mark as we loaded the dishwasher. And I don't think you've even noticed. His face crumpled in a way I hadn't seen since his father died. He sat heavily at the kitchen table, looking suddenly older and smaller. I knew something was wrong, he admitted quietly, but I was afraid to ask because I was afraid it was me, and I didn't know how to fix it. You might recognize this moment of brutal honesty, terrifying yet somehow liberating. The relief of finally articulating the weight you've been carrying, mixed with the fear of what comes next. The strange intimacy that emerges when protective walls finally crumble. James and Lydia, friends who nearly divorced after 20 years, described a similar turning point. We were honest in a way we hadn't been in decades, Lydia shared. It was like meeting each other for the first time again. Except this time we were meeting our real selves, not the idealized versions we'd fallen in love with initially. We didn't solve everything in one conversation. How could we? Decades of miscommunication and missed connections can't be repaired overnight. But something shifted that evening. A willingness to see each other clearly again, to acknowledge the pain we'd both been carrying in different ways. Mark suggested couples therapy, which surprised me more than anything else could have. This man who dismissed paying someone to listen to our problems was now researching therapists specializing in long-term marriage reconnection. His willingness to try felt like the first real gift he'd given me in years. You might be wondering if it's worth the effort, the vulnerability, the potential disappointment of trying to rebuild something that's been broken for so long. I wonder that too some days. But there's something powerful about choosing each other again, with clear eyes and realistic expectations. Nathan and Rebecca from our therapy group have been working on their marriage for 2 years after similar struggles. Some days I still wonder if it would be easier to start fresh with someone new, Rebecca confessed during a session. But then I remember that new relationships become old relationships eventually. The work isn't about who you're with, it's about how you're with them. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this journey so far. If this story resonates with you or someone you know, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support means everything and helps this message reach others navigating similar challenges in their relationships. Now, let's continue with our story. 6 months into our relationship renovation, as our therapist calls it, we're different people than we were when this began. Not perfect, not completely healed, but more authentic with each other than we've been in years. We've learned to fight fairly, to listen without planning our rebuttals, to check in before resentment builds. Mark surprised me last week by enrolling in a photography workshop so we could share my passion. I was touched by the gesture, but even more by his explanation. I want to see the world through your eyes for once, instead of expecting you to always see it through mine. Those words healed something deep within me. You might be surprised by how capable of change people can be when they truly understand what's at stake. The partner you've written off as stubborn or clueless might harbor depths of adaptability you've never seen because the right conversation hasn't yet happened, the true stakes haven't been made clear. Alexandra, who leads our couples workshop, says the most successful relationship renewals happen when both people accept a fundamental truth. The person you married no longer exists. Neither does the person they married. You must fall in love with who you both are now, not who you were then. I don't know what the future holds for Mark and me. I can't promise we'll celebrate our 50th anniversary, or that we won't face more periods of disconnection. Marriage offers no guarantees, regardless of the work you put in. But I do know that I no longer wake up feeling that heavy resentment that once colored every interaction. What I've learned through this journey is that love isn't a constant state, but a daily choice. It's choosing to see your partner with fresh eyes instead of through the lens of past disappointments. It's forgiving not just the big betrayals, but the 1,000 tiny ways we fail each other regularly. You deserve a relationship that evolves as you do, that has space for both people to grow independently and together. You deserve a love that doesn't diminish you or require your silence. And sometimes, fighting for that love means being brave enough to admit how close you've come to giving up on it. Yesterday, Mark and I sat on our porch swing as the sun set, holding hands and saying nothing. The silence between us, once filled with unspoken resentments and disappointments, now felt peaceful, different, alive with possibility instead of regret. And I realized that sometimes the greatest love stories aren't about perfect people who never lose their way. They're about imperfect people who keep finding their way back to each other. If this journey resonated with you, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who might need to hear this message. Your support helps more people discover that they're not alone in their relationship struggles and that there's always hope for renewal and reconnection. Thank you for joining me in this deeply personal story.